Hi everyone, so I'm sure you'll all remember this from November. I did a video on it. If I remember, I'll put a link in the top right hand corner. Poverty causing misery in the UK and ministers are in denial, says UN official. This is the UN Rapporteur, they call them, who did that report on the UK that found that 1 in 5 people were in poverty and universal credit was an absolute disaster. And to which I think it was Amber Wood or Theresa May? It was one of them that said that they were very disappointed in the language that he used. Now, they weren't disappointed that he found out that basically they've crippled the country and they are crippling the country. But no, they're disappointed in the language that he used. Anyway, there's another United Nations Rapporteur story that is going to piss the UK off and the US. This is from The Independent. Now, this is one of the first articles that I have seen in the mainstream media that I would say gets a passing grade for a story about Venezuela in the last week. It's been that bad. It's been that bad. The 45 minutes I spent with Ben Norton on Saturday, there was probably more information in that than in the last 6 months reporting from The Guardian, maybe even longer. You tell me. You watched it. I watched it back. I was that interested. I watched it back to hear what he said. There was more information than that, I think, than the last 6 months. Not just The Guardian, probably. The whole mainstream media in the UK combined. You tell me what you think. That's what I think, anyway. Venezuela crisis. Former UN rapporteur says US sanctions are killing citizens, say The Independent. Now, obviously my ears pricked up on this because this is what I've been saying for 6 months. Ever since I did my first Venezuela video back in, June, July. The first United Nations rapporteur to visit Venezuela for 21 years has told The Independent the United States sanctions on the country are illegal and could amount to, quote, crimes against humanity under international law. He went there at late 2017, he was there, and it's the first rapporteur for 21 years that was in Venezuela. Former Special Rapporteur Alfred de Zayas, who finished his term at the United Nations in March, so it's only 9 months ago that he's left, has criticised the United States for engaging in, quote, economic warfare against Venezuela, which he said is hurting the economy and killing Venezuelans. Again, I'm happy he's using that term, economic warfare. This is what it is. Mr. de Zayas, a former secretary of the United Nations Human Rights Council and an expert in international law, this is not like this is some YouTuber saying it like me. This is an expert, you know, spoke to The Independent following the presentation of his Venezuela report to the HRC. Ooh, that's a bad acronym, isn't it? In September. He said once, Hillary Clinton, just in case anybody didn't get that, he said that since in its presentation, the report has been ignored by the United Nations and has not sparked the public debate he believes it deserves. So what he's saying is, I thought this was going to be a big thing, but nobody picked up on it. Nobody picked up on it. I thought it was going to be huge. Sanctions kill, he told The Independent, adding that they fall most heavily on the poorest people in society, demonstrably causing death through food and medicine shortages, lead to violations of human rights, and are aiming at coercing economic change in assisted democracy. Again, what have I said about these sanctions on Russia? I have said these are not hurting Putin. These are not hurting the oligarchs. These sanctions are hurting the poorest people. It's always the poorest that the sanctions hurt. There are people's lives that get affected by these things. It's economic warfare. It's still warfare and people die. Oh, lead to violence. I've read that bit. On his fact-finding mission to the country in late 2017. So it's what? 13, 14 months ago, he found internal overdependence on oil, that is something that we've covered quite extensively, poor governance and corruption had hit the Venezuelan economy hard, but said, quote, economic warfare practiced by the United States, EU and Canada are significant factors in the economic crisis. Again, that's exactly what I've been saying for 6 months, and all of you have as well. You've been saying the same thing. I'll read the comments. In the report, Mr. de Zayas recommended, among other actions, that the International Criminal Court investigate the sanctions that have been put on Venezuela as possible crimes against humanity under Article 7 of the Rome Statute. So this is what he said when he came back in March 2017. This should have been massive. And he thought it was going to be massive. The United States sanctions are illegal under international law because they were not endorsed by the United Nations Security Council. Mr. de Zayas, an expert on international law and former senior lawyer with the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, said, so these sanctions that have been put on Venezuela are illegal as well as war. They're illegal as well because they were not endorsed by the United Nations Security Council, the UNSC. Modern day economic sanctions are blockades, and blockades are comparable with medieval sieges of towns. Exactly, this is why they call it siege warfare. That's what a sanction is. It's siege warfare. It's stopping anything coming in or getting out. 21st century sanctions attempt to bring not just a town but sovereign countries to their needs, of course. The United States Treasury has not responded to a request for comment. What a surprise. United States, they'd probably blame it in Palestine anyway if they if they did. United States sanctions prohibit dealing in currencies issued by the Venezuelan government. They also target individuals and stop United States-based companies or people from buying and selling new debt issued by PDVSA or the government. So it stops them importing anything because they can't buy anything because they can't use their own currency, and that's why there's hope of inflation. It's all they kept it volatile with the influx of dollars over there. I will go into it in a longer video that I am doing tomorrow on it, which I may save for the live stream, I don't know. But he has basically confirmed everything that we have been screaming and shouting about for the last year. Despite being the first United Nations official to visit and report from Venezuela in 21 years, Mr. de Zayas said his research into the causes of the country's economic crisis has so far largely been ignored by the United Nations and the media and caused little debate within the Human Rights Council. He believes his report has been ignored because it goes against the popular narrative that Venezuela needs regime change. And this is what Ben Norton and I were saying the other day in that video. This is not a surprise. This is not something that has happened overnight. This is something that the United States has been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing for decades. And this time, what they have done, by the look of it, is managed to try and orchestrate some sort of coup or attempt some sort of coup just in broad daylight and see if that'll work, instead of trying all these surreptitious moves. And you know what? It's not working so far. The BBC did an article. Wrote an article I saw last night. Made a big deal about some liaison to the military. I don't think he was even a general or anything like that. He was some liaison, and he said, "I support the other guy who's in hiding at the moment." So funny. Declared himself president and said, "Gotta go, bye." So funny. Nobody had ever heard of this guy. Nobody had ever heard of him. Who's our new president? Who? This is something they've been pushing now, and this is the United Nations Rapporteur saying, you know, this is exactly what's happening. They have forced this country into poverty, into worse poverty than it already is. And then said, look at these starving people, we've got to go in and have a regime change. It's funny, isn't it? The right-wing Bolsonaro government next door, that's not a regime, according to the media. That's just, you know, and these politicians. Venezuela is democratically elected leader. Most freest and most fair elections I have seen anywhere in the world, and apparently they're a regime, but the fascist dictator next door, Bolsonaro, who has just managed to get into power in a similar fashion to Trump, he's not, even though he's doing all the awful things he's doing. No doubt that will be a video as well. They've been trying this over and over and over for decades. And that United Nations Rapporteur is saying, listen, they've done this on purpose. For more truly honest, independent media like the video you just saw, please subscribe and click the bell below as well so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. If you also like and share and comment on the video as well, that really helps with the algorithm and boosts exposure. And if you can support me, please do so. You can do with any of the avenues on the screen at the moment and below this video. You can support me for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, and every dollar helps. We need your support at the moment. We do not have an operating fourth estate. I'm sure you're aware a functioning media holding power accountable is vital for democracy. At the moment, we haven't got it. So people like me are having to fill their shoes and do the job for them with your support. Thanks very much for your support. Till next time. Peace and take care.